One or two people have asked how this video was produced, so here it is, the backstage story from start to finish of the Don't Take My Coconuts video.
Doris, you can take my frosted flakes. Doris, you can take my shake and bake. Doris, you can take my Burger King. Even take my ring ding. But don't take my coconuts. Don't take my coconuts. Don't take my coconuts. Don't take my coconuts.
As you can see, the video has a musical track with performances by 9 clones of myself, with some close-ups for variety. First, I'll show you how the music track was produced, then how the video was shot and put together. First, the music track. I used an application called Mango Drum to compose a percussion background for the music. This application is specifically meant for samba type percussion instruments. It has a library of recorded sounds from real instruments which you can place on a grid representing the bars of the music. For example, the tamborim is selected here, and it has 2 sounds, a strong hit and a weaker one. If we now play the pattern in the grid, it sounds like this. Then switch on the agogo, which is a 2-tone bell, and this has the same pattern. Then the cowbell, Carlio shaker, the timbre, which is a hand drum, then the bass drums or surdos, That's the basic percussion track. The software also allows a playlist to be produced where you can specify how many times particular bars of music are played, and allows breaks and rests to be introduced. I recorded the computer playing this track, and this formed the guide track for the keyboard and vocals, which I recorded next, while listening to the guide track on headphones to keep accurately in time. The audio was all recorded on a Zoom H2 handy recorder, shown here. Using the same device for all the recordings gives a consistent timing so that all the tracks fit together in time. However, any timing drift in the recorder is not really significant when dealing with a track that's just a few minutes long. Everything stays typically within a few milliseconds, which is not noticeable to the human ear. Now the next step was to use Audacity, the free sound editor software, which allows multiple tracks of recordings to be mixed down to a single track. Here you can see the computer-generated percussion guide track is at the top. It sounds like this. There's a bit of reverberation added to make it more realistic. I first added the brass sounds using the Yamaha keyboard. First a generalized brass section sound, then a deeper trombone sound, and finally a brighter sound from the trumpet voice of the keyboard. I also recorded some offbeat stabs from the brass section, which I used during the verses and the brass bridge section of the music. Then came the vocals, recorded twice over so that the chorus could be double tracked, that is singing along with myself, to strengthen the sound and add variety. So this formed the guide track which I would listen to when recording the real instruments. Being based on the computer percussion track, it was a consistent 91 beats per minute throughout. Note there was no attempt to balance the sounds on the guide track. Pretty much every instrument is allowed to be clearly played out, whereas a more subtle approach will be needed in the final mix with real instruments. The real instruments were recorded in turn and the tracks put into the audio editor. Here I will turn on each track in turn. First the snare drum or kesha, then the bass drums, the surdus, giving the regular bass line. The shaker or chicalio is added to the mix. Now we switch in the other instruments. Then the brass. Finally the vocals.
Don't take my coconuts. Doris, you can take my shrimp fried rice. Doris, you can take my Italian ice. Doris, you can take my baby Ruth.
Once all the instruments were recorded and put into the editor, several hours were spent carefully adjusting the levels until the final mix was achieved. This included listening to the track on different devices, loudspeakers, headphones, mobile phones, etc., to get a good compromise sound which worked well on all the different devices that might be used for reproduction.
Don't take my coconuts.
Then it was down to the band factory to film the video. I videoed myself playing each instrument in turn, listening to the finished music track on earphones, so that the instruments were played accurately to time, also observing the breaks, choruses and verses, etc. There are two important points to note when doing this. Firstly, the camera must be set up on a tripod and left running throughout the entire filming without being touched, so that every clip has exactly the same framing. The second point is that the lighting conditions must remain the same throughout, so that all clips are consistently lit. Any external light from windows needs to be shielded by drawing curtains, otherwise if the sun comes out it can totally change the light conditions in the room. We're trying to make it appear that the instruments are performing at the same time instead of sequentially as actually happened. Any change in lighting will stand out. Near the beginning of the filming, I took a snapshot or still from the video as shown here. This forms the stage or backdrop on which all the action takes place. The music track is put into the editor, and this is the reference against which all the instrument playing is timed. Each instrument was filmed in turn, taking an appropriate position on the stage. Here you can see some of that filming with the more boring bits speeded up or cut out. Note that there's quite a lot of fiddling with my mobile phone. That's what I was using to listen to the guide track. Then all this is combined in the video editing software. For this I use Cyberlink's PowerDirector 13, the Ultimate Edition, which has lots of useful facilities that can be used for this sort of work. One of the basic techniques is masking. This is where large parts of the scene are made transparent so that other tracks show through. Only the selected instrument or player is shown. Many different shapes of mask are available. For the tambourine shown here, a simple rectangular mask was used, as you can see. The other useful technique is chroma-keying. This is similar to masking, but the particular color that you choose in the background becomes transparent in this case. In effect, it makes a mask on a frame-by-frame basis. This is especially useful for the instruments that are in front, such as the bass surdo drums. The background is switched on and off here to show the effect of the simple mask, and also combined with chroma keying of the blue of the screen behind the player. You can see a few of the instruments clips playing simultaneously here. Initially the stage background picture is off and black spaces appear between the instruments. When the background is switched on, it looks like all are performing on the stage. The two front instruments are arrowed. These are where chroma keying is vital, so their movement can appear in front of the characters behind. The two instruments on the left are given custom masks. These are irregular shape masks, which more closely control what is allowed through to the front. The custom masks are created as follows. A still or snapshot is taken from the video, as shown here for the timbre player. This is then edited in a photo editor to make all but the required area transparent. Note, to do this you have to save the picture in a suitable format which supports transparency, such as the GIF or PNG format. In the editor, first large rectangular areas are erased. Then the eraser tool is carefully worked around the player as shown. The non-transparent area is then filled in black using the paintbrush tool. This is so that there is a clear transparent and not transparent content to the picture, as the luminance or alpha channel will be used to create the mask. Finally, by trial and error, the mask is bulked out in places where there is movement by the player to give this final mask. You can see there is most movement in the head region, whereas the legs remain more or less stationary. This is what the final masked picture looks like. To give some visual variety, close-ups were shot of most of the instruments being played. They were prepared as shown in the following clips. The movement in the clips were carefully synchronized to the music track, as close-ups allow clear scrutiny of the player's movements.
Take my coconuts, don't, don't, don't. Don't take my coconuts, don't, don't, don't. Don't take my coconuts, don't, don't, don't. Don't take my coconuts to the don't, don't, don't. Don't take my coconuts, don't, don't, don't. Don't take my coconuts, don't, don't, don't. Don't take my coconuts, don't, don't, don't. Don't take my coconuts.
Everything came together in the video editor, PowerDirector 13, shown here. There's a monitor screen in the top right which shows either the raw video from a clip or the actual picture, which has been produced by the editing process, for example the masking discussed above. Below is the timeline view, which shows how various clips are selected throughout the running time of the video. On the top, on track 1, is the still or stage picture. Then below are 9 tracks representing the instruments and singer. And track 11, shown here, is the track carrying the close-ups, while right at the bottom is the only audio track, the music track. The editing was done on a high-end Dell desktop computer using an Intel i7 4-core processor running at 3.6 GHz and with 16 GB of RAM. It's unlikely that this project could have been accomplished on a lesser system, given the 11 simultaneous video tracks in use here. Even with this system, the PowerDirector software would occasionally hang while it completed its internal processes. You just have to be patient in those circumstances. So this is the final result, a musical video with a difference. One soundtrack but with 11 video tracks making up the Don't Take My Coconuts video. You can see the complete version by selecting the YouTube address in the text accompanying this video.
Doris, you can take my frosted flakes. Doris, you can take my shake and bake.